Hello, hello. My name is Reese, and today we are going to chat about generosity. But first, a reminder that this content is part of and brought to you by Root. And brought to you is not the right term. This is part of the Root Fellowship, and Root is a beautiful, lovely thing that is helping us understand our root systems in order to find a root for humanity. Let's do it. And if you're excited by that, check out the Root Fellowship. We have these cohorts happening every couple of months with world-class systems thinkers. You can join it, think with them, and build this amazing future at root.co. Whoever you are in the world, I hope you're doing well. Okay, we're going to chat abundance and generosity, and we're chatting generosity. We chatted about abundance last time, but now let's chat about what it means to be generous. So we're going to first chat about, that we got enough money, and then examples of us having enough money, how we manifest this generosity, and how that leads to this non-traditional return on investment, and then also some counterexamples of people not being generous. So first, we have enough money. And by enough, I mean, there's this abundance piece that we've been chatting about, which is where we just say there's more, right? Where you have this abundance of information, which means there's just more information in the world as a result of the internet, which is true. Or here, we have more value in the world as a result of the Industrial Revolution. So that's one kind of abundance, but there's another kind of abundance which means, enough, that we have actually enough of the thing. And this is more the idea shown by this graph, where you say, okay, happiness, we know that money has diminishing returns on happiness, and that the first $1,000 you get is super impactful, but then if you already have $1 million, the next $1,000 is not that impactful. And roughly speaking, around $45,000 of individual income, it starts to really, really level off. At that point, it requires a doubling to get happier, doubling, and then it really starts to level off at that point. So you kind of have enough. This is another graph of that same idea, which shows life satisfaction and income across a bunch of different countries. And again, same scale on the bottom and same scale on the left side. The bottom is now household income and not individual, but similar idea. And you can see that, if you don't have very much income, you're not going to be very happy. And then if you double your income, you'll get about 0.5 happiness points more, 0.5 out of 10. And you can just keep on doing that. So, but the final doublings here, in order to get from, your household from $32,000 to $64,000, you need to get it increased to $32,000 in order to get a 0.5 bit of happiness. And right around this point, this is where it stops off on the graph, but that's where it gets really diminishing or even levels off, where it's you need an additional $64,000 to get that extra 0.5 of happiness. And it also might just be totally level. It's tough to say. So that idea of life happiness, I think let's break it down a little bit more and get a little bit more a little bit more specific and detailed about that. So we think about life happiness in these different countries and how, happiness or income makes you happier at the beginning, but then doesn't make you happier at the end. And we have this version of reality where we think about, it's look, there's all these developing countries in the world, and then there's the developed countries in the world. The developing countries are ones where you have a lot of babies per woman because a lot of them might die and you need them to work in the fields. And because the children surviving to age 5, not that many survive. And so that's the way we think of the world, is kind of this binary developed versus developing. But actually, that graph is from 1965, and the real graph is this one from 2017, where almost everybody has roughly 2 babies per woman, and almost all babies survive until age 5. This is what the world actually looks like. So it's not like this developed versus developing thing. We can get a little bit more texture here. And to get that texture, we have this beautiful little 4-level graph. So instead of thinking just developed versus developing, we can think of humans on this level system, where level 1 is the worst level. You're making less than $2 a day. You're in extreme poverty. And each of these little humans here represents 1 billion people. So there's 1 billion people living on less than $2 a day right now. Then you get essentially a quadrupling where, $8 a day, between $2 and $8 a day, that's level 2. And this is a lot easier. You have not just wood burning fire, but you maybe have other forms of heat in your house. And about 3 billion people are at level 2. And then you do another quadrupling up to 32, so from $8 to $32 a day. And then you're starting to get somewhere. You have a bike, perhaps. You don't have a car, but you might have like a little motorcycle thing. And there are about 2 billion people living at level 3. And then level 4 is above $32 per day. And those are folks who are, and $32 per day is roughly $15,000 a year. So it's still not that much money, but it is more money, $10,000 to $15,000 a year. And these folks, you likely have a car, you have electricity in your house, all these great things. And there's about 1 billion people there. So what we can do with this leveling system, it helps us, these are different types of life that people experience, and it allows us to take this graph, which is like, okay, here's the number of people in extreme poverty and the number of people not in extreme poverty, which is this binary perspective. It allows us to break it into 4, where you say, okay, instead, here's these level 1 people, again, going down a ton, less and less people in level 1, but we're getting a lot more people in level 2, about 3 billion. And then level 3, we got about 2 billion folks who are in level 3, kind of leveling up, still a lot more folks there. And then level 4, about a billion right now. So this is roughly how you can think about these levels. But I actually disagree with the author of the book that created these levels. These are from a book called Factfulness by Hans Rosling. And you should add a 5th level. And that 5th level comes after $45,000 a year. After $120 per day, which is roughly $45,000 per year, you flip a switch, right? It's a big difference. These levels, it's important to think of these levels, blah, blah, blah. But then once you get above $45K or $120 a day, you hit level 5, which is abundance, where you can allow money to flow through you back to the system. And that level 5 is crucial. It's a crucial way that we need to think of ourselves in society. It allows us to be generous. And so roughly right now, we have level 4. There's these are estimates for myself, but about 0.4 or 0.5 billion people, so 500 million people in level 4. And we are starting to get right now we have about 500 million people in level 5. And those people have abundance and they can give back. They can self-tax themselves to give back to the system. And yeah, that's because they're here. They have enough. What happens when they start to think from this level 5 perspective is this. So this is a graph without the level 5 perspective, which is a prediction, a simulation of how the world's population will transition through the levels over time. So right now, in 2017, we have some people in level 1, a lot of people, 3 billion people in level 2, about 2 billion people in level 3, and then 1 billion in level 4. That's what it looks like now. And then 2027, it's going to be about half, level 2, level 3. But then by 2040, man, there's going to be, a lot of people in level 3 and less people in level 2. We're going to be really, pushing people further and further up the levels. That's amazing. But, but here you're pushing all these people into level 4, but not recognizing the beautiful level 5-ness. And so what we can instead think about is we're getting more and more people to level 5. And as we do so, we can those level 5s can give that money back to level 1. People who are in extreme poverty, they can start to get out of extreme poverty and move up the levels, and we can get push more and more people towards level 4 and level 5. So that's what this looks like from a macro perspective. Instead of, another way I like to think about this is right now our giving as a percentage of GDP per year, we give about, this is in the United States, we give about 2% of our GDP, we give it to nonprofits and stuff. It's been essentially constant. GDP has risen, but this has stayed constant. But the claim is that because we're getting to level 5-ness, because we're getting to abundance, and we can do generosity, instead the graph in the future will hopefully look like this, where giving becomes a greater and greater percentage of GDP as we self-tax ourselves to give back to level 1 folks and other folks in society, and stuff like climate change and things. Again, staying from this macro perspective, you can think of it like this, where you have the world, you got the globe as it is today. And today we got about 8 billion people. And you can think of it as a 1115 system, where there's about 1 billion people in North and South America combined. There's about 1 billion people in Europe. There's about 1 billion people in Africa. And there's about 5 billion people in Asia. 1.5 in China, 1.5 in India, and the rest in other places. This is interesting. the people that are at level 4, level 5 are just, in the developed countries of Europe and United States, Canada mostly. In the future, what's going to happen is, definitely what's going to happen is we're going to get a 1145 system by 2100. What that means is that we're going to get 3 billion new people, and essentially all of those new people are going to be in Africa, which is interesting in its own right, and it's kind of cool. And it's because of just population demographics, where they're having more children there because they're poorer. And when we get those 3 billion people, and it essentially levels out at that point, by the way, when we get, we're up to 11 billion people total, 3 billion new people in Africa, and the hope is that everybody will be green at that point in time, that everybody will be a level 5 then. I like to think of this from, the perspective of the networked human organism, where, and especially this middle one, where there's a constant amount of energy coming from the sun, and there's a constant amount of atoms that we can rearrange however we want, and essentially we're just trying to rearrange them. The nice thing is that because we're leveling off on our S-curve here, where we're, going to get to 11 billion and just be flat, and maybe get to 12 billion in a long time, but essentially just be at 11 billion, that we can then use our constant energy and constant atoms and rearrange them away and create this closed loop system for everybody to meet all their needs. Okay. So what does, us having enough money, and especially those level 5 folks, what does that feel like in your body? I feel sad and excited. I am sad because, there's so many level 1 folks who are still in a tough situation, and that level 2 and level 3 is tough too. And I'm also sad because some of the level 5 folks don't recognize their abundance and are still in these status games and on their hamster wheels and not giving back, which is sad. And I'm excited because there's this future of, in 2100, there being, 1145, a new 3 billion people all in Africa, and the whole world all being at level 5. That's going to be amazing. And it's possible. Okay, interactive time. Do you believe that money has diminishing returns on happiness? And does leveling off around $45,000 for an individual, does that sound right to you? I know a lot of folks push back on this and are like, I heard 75,000 and blah, blah, blah. And there's some debate there, but it really is starting to level off. And what does that feel like to you? Do you have some internal, I know initially I had some internal blockings that stopped me from really embodying and understanding that and internalizing that. Second question, what is the incentive for a level 5 to give? Why would you do it? We're going to chat about that in a second. But first, let's chat about manifesting generosity. So the folks that do have enough, what does it look like when they start to give back? Well, the easiest, simplest thing is just folks giving money to other people in the world. If I have enough, I'll just give money to somebody else who's poor. Great, have my money. Give directly is the best example of this. You can send these folks in rural Kenya and rural Uganda money, and you just send it, you put it onto the interwebs, and you say, give them $30 or $100 or whatever, puts it into, and then they just get it on their phones. And it's amazing, and it helps them so much. It's like, and for me, giving, I give $30 a month to support this universal basic income for folks in rural Kenya and Uganda. I think rural Kenya, and that $30 a month gives them a basic income, and it doesn't hurt me at all, right? $30 a month is totally nothing to me, but it's totally life-changing to them. And being able to do that in such an easy way where 90+% of the money goes directly to them, that's amazing. And just the trust there, just like, instead of trying to help them in this way, it's just like, no, have the money. You need the help, and you're going to do good stuff with it. I trust you. So this is just the pure example of generosity. There are some other examples, like the self-taxing pledges. These mostly come from the effective altruist community. There's this one called Giving What We Can. What they say is, look, we got about 5,000 members, And they all pledge to say, hey, I'm going to give 10% of my income to charity. And they do. And so they've given about, $125 million to these charities, and especially to these highly effective charities. That's a key piece here, where it's like giving this money to my cat is not going to be very helpful. Giving it to these really poor folks is amazing. It's such a big impact on them. Or versus someone else, if I gave it to my local arts studio, as much as I love them, it's going to have less of an impact than giving it to someone around the world, a poor person, a person in extreme poverty. So these pledges, these people have donated. It's a bunch of members who pledged to donate. They've pledged to donate $1.8 billion, and they've already donated $125 million, which is amazing. That's an amazing level 5 to level 1 switch. There's a bunch of other examples of these. We don't need to go too deeply into them, but they all have a self-tax pledge where you pledge a percentage of your income, or like there's this founder's pledge one where you take the pledge when you become a founder, and then you pledge a percentage of your exit money to give to charity. They all have a bunch of members, and they've all got some donations. There's the way I like to think about these self-tax things is from an institutional perspective, where you have the state, which, makes money from taxes, and you have firms, which make money from profit. They provide value and then get dollars in return. And then you have this civil society, which is unions and religions and cooperatives and nonprofits, and they make money from people donating, from people self-taxing. And this has happened for religions for a really long time. This idea of tithing in Christianity, where you give 10% of your money, or back in the day it was tithing the fields, giving 10% of your fields to the church or to poor folks. Zakat is the same idea, but in Islam. Dana is the same idea, but in Buddhism. And so, these self-taxing has been a thing within religions for a long time, and is going to be more spread in society soon. Another example of this is thinking of money as, instead of an object, think of it as a flow, where you have your income. You're like, okay, I'm making, $50,000 a year or whatever. Well, I'm going to self-tax 10% of that to let 5% of, or to let $5,000 flow through me and back to other folks. And so here's some examples of that. One of them is this hashtag pass the check, which Give Directly was doing, where there were these new checks that they sent to people in America from the COVID pandemic. And people were like, look, I don't need it. I can just pass it on and give it to folks who need it more. And at the time of this, 1,000 people had pledged to pass the check on for a total of $1 million, which isn't much, but it isn't nothing. It's people actively saying, I've gotten more money. I'm going to let it flow through me and pass it on. And there were other many examples of this. Like there's this other one called Split the Check. You can also, instead of letting money flow through, you can kind of say, I'm going to take this money, I'm just going to put it in this pool, this shared pool, and give it to whoever wants it. So I had a funny example of this, an experiment that I did on Twitter, where I was like, look, I got enough money, and I want to give it no strings attached like I do with Give Directly. And so what I've done is I've sent $20 of ETH, of Ethereum, this cryptocurrency, to this address. And if you want the ETH, well, just use this private key, like the password. And so this was a way to say, hey, look, I'm just going to put this money out here, and whoever wants it, you can use it. Do whatever you want with it. Just here's the password for the money. And after 7 minutes, it was taken, and it was given to this effective altruist charity Against Malaria Foundation to help people with malaria. This is just a cool example of being like, look, here's money. Who wants it? There's other examples of shared pools with these things, these distributed autonomous organizations, or a DAO. There's a thing called a Moloch DAO. And we don't need to go too deeply into this, but it's a shared idea where you pool the cryptocurrency into this fund, and then you let the people decide where to give it and how to support the ecosystem with that money. So it's a similar idea, but instead of an individual deciding or letting anybody put it wherever, instead like the community, the crowd decides where it goes. You can also offer stuff on a sliding scale. So, another example from Twitter that I wrote was, I canceled this Airbnb booking recently, and I said, hey, I need to cancel. I know it's not in your, and this was pre-COVID, so I was like, hey, I need to cancel. I know it's not in your policy, but could you give me some money back? I was like asking the people, please, I need to cancel at the end because my dad was sick. And they were like, yeah, we're students and we really do actually really need this money, but we can give you some of it. Like, we can't give you the full 6 days, but they offered like, here, we can give you 4 days back. That's totally fine. We'd love to do that. And I was like, oh shit, like you're students, you really need the money. Oh, you're good. So I said, hey, no, you're good. That dollar is less important. That money's less important for us, for my dad and I, than it is for you. And so it's just this back and forth where I was like, hey, could I get some money back? And they were like, yeah, it's going to be a little tough for us, but yeah, you can have it back if you want it. And I was like, oh, no, it's good. It sounds like you need it more. So we essentially put the money into this thing. We're like, do you want it? You can have it. Whoever, we trust each other. And similarly with something like Root, where it's $2,000 for a cohort, but it's a sliding scale. You can, if you ask and want and think that you want a scholarship or want some, if you don't have as much money, that's all good. Just say, hey, I don't have as much money. Could I pay a smaller amount? And I'll say, yeah, name an amount, and pretty much that works. So it's another way to represent abundance. Instead of letting it flow through, you just say, I'll just take less at the beginning. There's also some programmatic tithing where, and this is if this, then that. And this is just imagining code where you say, if something code happens on the internet, then give the money somewhere else. So there's the best example of this right now is this thing called defeat by tweet, #defeat_by_tweet. And what they do is a bunch of people on the internet, 18,000 folks, have all got on this website and said, every time Trump tweets, I'm going to donate money to charity, to like a Black Lives Matter charity, or to stop him from getting in office or whatever. And about, $900, $1,000 is donated per tweet. So this is just an example of people being like, look, I got enough. I'm going to hook it up to this programmatic thing so that every time this bad thing happens, I'm just going to donate to charity. And they've donated millions of dollars at this point through this system. There's another way to think about enoughness and generosity in terms of we're always concentrating on more and more efficiency. So like Amazon recently, for their Prime folks, they're like, we're going to go from 2-day delivery to 1-day delivery. It's like 1-day delivery. 2-day was already quick enough. Like I don't need the TV tomorrow. It's fine if it comes next week. And so instead you can imagine an option where we keep 2-day delivery and then allocate the surplus somewhere else. Either give it to their workers to give them some time off, or like maybe to carbon offsets to future us. It doesn't need to be about now me all the time. So you can imagine instead of on this Prime, shipping options, instead of only like, Prime, I need it faster now. You can imagine something where you say, hey, look, I'll just take it next week and like give the really intense Amazon workers maybe a break. Or, hey, let's do this carbon-free shipping where I'll put an extra $1 on this or whatever to make it carbon-free. And that's totally cool by me. On that carbon offsetting point, I think I just want to highlight this as an example of generosity and abundance because you can start to pay to do some carbon offsets. And we don't think about it much. We mostly think about graphs like this that show, look, if you want to have an impact on your carbon, it's not that helpful if you change your light bulbs like you should, but it's not that impactful. But if you, have one less child, well, that's super impactful. It's 50 climates, 50 tons averted. And so that's a good perspective, but actually you can have a really big impact by donating. And this is if you kind of zoom out on that graph, this is how much is that same graph, but instead, if you make the lifestyle decision of just donating $1,000 to these charities, well, that has a massive impact. 100 tons of CO2, that has a massive impact. And so instead of thinking about buying LEDs, switching to a hybrid car, or whatever, it's like a really big impact that you can have is just self-taxing yourself and donating to these amazing carbon offset charities. As one side note here, just because it looks weird, having one field child on this graph is a lot less than the other graph because of a variety of political reasons where having children in developed countries doesn't matter as much in the future because the countries are going to have these carbon caps. And so it's likely that even though you have more people, they won't actually cost as much because each new person is worth less and less now. Has less and less of a carbon impact. In any case, your carbon footprint, you should think about it. It's like it's roughly 10 plus the number of flights you've taken in a year. So if I took 5 flights this last year, well, then my carbon impact is 15 tons, 10 plus 5, 15 tons of CO2 or CO2 equivalent. And you can essentially pay $1 to $10 to offset your carbon footprint per ton. So I could pay, $15 or, $150 per year to offset all of my carbon impact. And that's amazing. As a funny example of this, I was a vegetarian for a long time. I am a vegetarian, and I was doing it for the environment initially, and that was great. But I learned later that I could have the same impact as being a vegetarian for a whole year. It has a carbon offset where it's like instead of doing meat, you're doing vegetarian stuff, and you could pay $1.34 per year to have the same impact. So I was like, oh my God, I've been doing this for 8 years. I could pay $10 to have the same impact as 8 years of vegetarianism, and that's when I got pretty excited about self-taxing for carbon offsets. There is another perspective. You kind of zoom out a level and say, okay, we can have generosity both as an individual, like just being like, oh, I have enough. You can have it. I can have it, whatever. You can also think about it from a company perspective, where I gave this example back in the day of these shared outcomes where Nike and Adidas they're competing, but really they have the shared outcome of spreading sports, and helping athletes. And similarly, you can imagine something like Root, which is trying to spread systems thinking and help people with systems thinking. Something like the Santa Fe Institute, which is also amazing. In theory, they're a competitor of mine, but really, they're doing the same thing. It's amazing. We have this shared outcome. I would love to, give them money if they achieve the same shared outcome, or, help somehow think from this abundant mindset where it's like, hey, if you need to help spread systems thinking, I'd be happy to help you do that with my time or my money or whatever. Yes, you transition to this, like, instead of competition, a co-opetition, mindset, like collaboration plus competition, or co-evolution, or this kind of win-win mindset. Okay, so those are examples. What do those examples of generosity feel like in your body? Excitement. I feel excited about all of the untapped potential of giving people, of using this, there's this untapped, just like for me with happiness, I got a lot happier when I allowed myself to be happy and recognize the sun as a beautiful thing, where I could look at the sun and just be happy with its warmth. And it just created happiness in me. And I can see a world where more people look at the sun and go, I'm happier now. That's cool. And similarly, there's this big bucket of money that's not actually making people happier, but can make people so much happier if they just self-tax it back to help other folks. Interactive time. What kinds of generosity feel best to you? Is it giving 10% back, 5% back, 20% back? Maybe you'd rather interact with a sliding scale or pay your workers more or something like that. What do you think? Second question, how could a self-tax be implemented in code? Okay, now let's chat about why self-taxing can give us this non-traditional return on investment. It can actually make sense to self-tax, even though it's taking money away from yourself. So there's traditional ROI, where you have an exchange here, like this one on the left, the double thank you of capitalism. You give somebody money, you get some goods in return, and you're both happy. Or there's this ROI where you in the investment sense, where you give some person some dollars, and then it makes more money, and then at the end you get $2 back. That's return on investment, baby. Well, there's this idea of ROI, a different kind of ROI, through this thing called egoistic altruism, where the idea behind egoistic altruism is that you can be altruistic, but it actually helps you. And so how does that work? Well, the idea is that you have on the left here, this is one of the folks from the Bill and Melinda Gates documentary about folks that live on less than $2 a day. And you have this woman who's this day laborer who's just, it's tough. She's got a tough life. Every life she's just doing this day labor thing. It's hard for her health, and it's also stuff that machines could probably do. But she's doing it. And Meanwhile, I'm over here and I just lost my mother to Alzheimer's, and at the age of 65, or sorry, 66, 67, sorry. And that was very sad for me. And it was especially sad because this woman on the left, she was not able to help. She was just doing she's in a scarcity mindset. She's doing this day laborer thing, and she's not able to help with developing a cure for Alzheimer's or whatever. But if we give a lot of money to her and women like her, from level 5 to level 1 folks, well, then you can imagine there's that same woman. If she was born into a different situation, she could totally be a doctor or a scientist or a teacher, any of these amazing things. And if she is one, well, then let's say she's this amazing doctor that does this amazing Alzheimer's research that then saves Alzheimer's. Oh my God, I'm so happy. So although I just gave money to poor folks, those poor folks moved up the levels, up the ladder, and eventually were able to do the things that I actually want, like saving Alzheimer's or curing Alzheimer's. And so I did get some return on investment there. It's doubly true because as people move up the ladder, it's not only just me who wants Alzheimer's to be saved or other folks in the developing world. It's all these folks who moved up the ladder also care. Because these folks, if you're a person living on less than $2 a day, you just care about your next meal and you're in this intense scarcity mindset. You're not living long enough to care about Alzheimer's, and you don't care about stuff like climate change, right? You can't. But once you move up to level 4, level 5, you really start to care about, the future of humanity and climate change, and your parents might be starting to have Alzheimer's and whatever. And so, yeah, you are increasing. The way we say this is that you are increasing look at this down one here. You're increasing the supply of educated folks, and you're increasing the demand for those long-term needs. So you're increasing the number of doctors who can make Alzheimer's cures, and you're increasing the number of folks who want that cure to exist. And so they're going to fund research and put money towards it and whatever. So back to our little graph up here where it's like 2019, we're in this 1115 system where there's not that many educated folks, and the demand for long-term needs for climate change or Alzheimer's or whatever is not as high. But as we move people up all the levels and we get to a 1145 system with everybody getting in Africa, we're going to get hopefully we'll have a lot more educated folks and a lot more demand for long-term needs. And that's amazing. The more people that are quote unquote like me, that can produce like I can produce and supply and help the world in the ways that I want to help the world, aka are educated and smart and whatever, and that have the same demands that I have of saving climate change stuff, that's good for me. So the more people that want what I want and that can produce it, that's better for me. And so this is kind of a form of indirect return on investment, where you give the money and then it comes back to you over time as a result of people being more educated in the world. This is kind of like, governments educating their populace, and you just like have smarter people in society and that will be good for you. And we can see this in America in a variety of ways. We're just like, it's more the ways that poor folks, it's harder for them to consume information. It's harder for them to check fake news and all these things. It's like, that's hurtful for me. And if everybody was more educated and had more money, that would be better for everybody. So that's one side of ROI. The other side of ROI is, the first one is the ROI from egoistic altruism. And then also, though, you can get ROI from meaning. So the idea here is that for someone like me, when I give directly, that $30 a month, it is just making me happier. It's like if I spent that money on chocolate for myself, it doesn't help my now me. My now me is already full. I have my basic needs already met. I got my food. It's all good. But my future me is always still searching for meaning and trying to get my needs for meaning met. And a great way to get them met is by helping the self-actualization of myself and other people and the human race as a whole. And so by giving money to this woman and other people through Give Directly, it's actively, I get ROI from it. I just get, it's not traditional ROI, but I'm getting meaning in return. And that feels good. And this is all to say that, generosity is adaptive and has been adaptive for all of our history. Back in the day, we started to do things like kin selection, where we would help each other out and cooperate, because if my kin survived, then my genes would still propagate, or genes that are kind of like mine. Or like reciprocal altruism, where if I help somebody out, if I scratch their back and do their little monkey hair thing, then they'll do the same for me. And so it helps each other. And so similarly with this, by level 5s giving to level 1s, that is the human organism and humans themselves being adaptive and saying, hey, we want the species itself to survive. And in order to do that, we will engage in this form of altruism that helps us get more meaning and is egoistic altruism, and that it gets more people who are like us in the world so that we can propagate longer as a species. Okay, what does egoistic altruism feel like in your body? Sadness and excitement. I think that's how I'm feeling today. The sadness is the folks who are in tough times. And the excitement is just that opportunity is evenly distributed, talent is evenly distributed in the world, but opportunity is not. And that you have all these poor folks who, wow, once they get light and once they get electricity and once they get out of their scarcity mindset and more food and, access to the internet and all these amazing things, they are going to help society so much. That's going to be awesome. Okay, what do you want, and how does giving to a poor person help you get it? Yeah, so what do you want in society? What's something like a long-term need of yours, and how does giving to a poor person actually help you get that need? The other question is, what kind of meaning do you get from giving? When you're generous to folks with your money or your time, how does that feel meaningful to you? Okay, finally, I want to give some counterexamples of people that are not being generous. And again, this is, for me, the most judgmental that I get in my life, so I'm self-aware of that. It's also the most, shouldy that I get. We're like, you are doing bad. And again, it's just because people have been socialized into this mindset of greed and thinking that money is a end in and of itself and not a means to an end, and thinking that they need more and more money, that you can't have enough money, but you can. In any case, here's some counterexamples. The main one is it's luxury goods. It's people on the hamster wheel who are buying these really expensive handbags or hats or shoes or watches or jewelry or, oh my God, so many luxury goods. And they don't do anything, right? I mean, a nice hat. And again, I'm aware of my judgment here, but having some nice hats is okay. The example that I give sometimes for this is, I think Oprah has 3 $10 million houses. It's like, okay, I understand the first one. I maybe understand the second one, but do you need the third one? Is that crucial? So when people engage in luxury goods, it's sad because they're doing this meaning thing where they're like, okay, I got enough. My basic needs are met. What do I do in my life now? I don't really know. Okay, there's all these people around me are doing stuff. I got to keep up with the Johnsons on this family, on this hamster wheel. And they're engaging in this both a status game, a zero-sum status game, but also this meaning game where they're trying to get meaning by being like, oh, I have this nicer handbag now, and that makes me feel meaningful. It gives my life meaning or whatever. And that just is sad to me, where it's like there's so many cheaper ways to get meaning. Giving to somebody in the world, a really poor person, is very meaningful. It's like you could take one handbag, instead of buying it, instead give that money and support the basic income of tens or hundreds of people in rural Kenya. Oh my God, so meaningful. Or, just something like this thing that I reference here, where this, having this clear, important path on top of this anti-fragile attractor, having these symbols that exist on top of our reality and being present with that reality. For me, being present in my garden, I get meaning out of that. Hanging out with the plants and my cat, who's not actually my cat, but is kind of my cat. that's amazing. And it's cheap, and it's still a way to get meaning. And so making sure that meaning making is coupled to impact or is really cheap is crucial, and not allowing for these kind of just status signaling or hamster wheeling ways where people are spending so much money, getting some meaning out of it, but that money could be used in better ways. Great. So that is what we chat about today. That we're in this crazy new part in society where we have level 5. We have reached level 5, people. It's a new kind of game. It's a new kind of boss out there. We can also, now that we have abundance, we can manifest that abundance as generosity in so many cool ways. And that gives us ROI in these untraditional ways, primarily of egoistic altruism, but also of meaning. And then there's some counterexamples where people are on their hamster wheels doing these status games that is not great. What will it feel like to integrate your learning, and what to watch out for? Well, if you start first, you can start seeing the world in terms of levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So instead of just seeing, a developed world and the developing world, it's like, okay, no, are these people, how much money are these folks making a day? And you can really start to get a more textured, vibrant, extreme poverty versus, okay, well, in America, the funny thing is that pretty much everybody in America, I think 95 or even 99% is actually level 4+, which is really just a classic story about the globe and the global south and how there's so much poverty outside of these developed countries that even the poverty in America, even though it feels bad and is bad, it's bad, it's still pretty high up on the levels. The second thing you'll understand is, just coming into interactions with a sense of abundance and a sense of generosity. Like that Airbnb interaction for me is like, hey, I could use some money back, please. And they're like, ooh, yeah, we could do that, but it's going to be tough because we're students and stuff and we're kind of low on money. It's like, oh, no, you're good. Saying like, you good. It's great. It's like, it's all good. You can have the money. And trusting people. Third one is, this, as you go deeper down this, it does require this deeper sense of no ego and decentralizing power away from yourself, because money still gives you power, right? It's not like Bill Gates. Bill Gates has, 10,000 times more money than me, but but he doesn't have, he's not 10,000 times happier than me, but he does have at least probably 1,000 times more power than me. And so this thing of like trusting the world and saying, I'm going to give power to other folks and like trust that the organism itself will be better if more people have more money. And then, you'll start to, and then starting to see this ROI where you're like, I'm giving money through me, so I'm going to give money, but it comes back to me as egoistic altruism. And then like these envy and jealousy pieces where you're like decentralizing power away from yourself. And you're like, okay, but like, I don't know if this makes sense because like that kind of sucks for me. So you'll just go back and forth. But at the beginning, you'll start by giving and be like, this is amazing, I'm going to give more. And then you're like, wait, why am I doing this? And then you'll just get this balance here and just, be in relationship to this relationship. I hope that was helpful, and I hope it was not too judgmental, but I do encourage you to think about giving in your own life, especially if you're a level 5 person. And thank you for watching. If you're excited by this or want to help more people self-tax, check out the Root Fellowship at root.co. Goodbye.